Running a manufacturing company means things don't pause. Production moves, people depend on it, and problems don't stay contained. Angelo D'Amico runs a $25 million plus operation while managing a second business at the same time. Those two worlds don't move the same way, but the decisions connect. You mentioned keeping someone around longer than you should have. I was going to ask if you could take us into one of those situations, like what was actually happening at that point?
So, going back maybe 5 years ago, I want to say, like, yeah, we're talking about today keeping people around too long. This isn't necessarily just about one person, but we had a moment in the history of our company where I felt that there were a handful of people that we had accumulated that were just wrong for us. And the approach that we took, the mentality we took, I thought there were signs for it, but I just kind of thought that being a good leader meant trying to fix that, be that kind of caring leader. And I think I was trying to fix something that wasn't really fixable in that situation. And a lot of people probably know they've been in a situation where they tried to fix something that they shouldn't try to fix. And deep down, they knew they couldn't fix and they waited too long to do it. So that's what we'll talk about, I think, is what happened with me and my company.
So, what you are actually running right now across two businesses, I was going to ask you what a normal week looks like for you with two parallel paths, so to speak.
We have our primary business. We're a manufacturer of elastomeric products. So we're in B2B, we're an industrial company. And then we've done a couple of small acquisitions over time. And one of those acquisitions we kind of merged in where it's all under our brand. And then we have this other one where we kept its own brand, and that's an equine company, and it's B2C primarily. And then on the B2C side, with the other company, we're dealing with like a lot more on the brand side, a lot more on how to make sure that people feel a certain way about the company, and warranties and longevity with that. And in fact, we do share a manufacturing department, so we can manufacture for the different businesses out of the same pool of people. But on the sales side, of the customer facing side, the brand, the website, all the marketing, that's all very separate. And so I do have to balance those two things. And while we acquired that business, there is a remote aspect to that in terms of trying to oversee people that aren't necessarily on site with us.
What does the day look like for you? Is it a structure, or are you putting out a lot of fires depending on the week?
Luckily, we have a fairly mature system, like a management system, and we've got a great management team. So a lot of what's happening in terms of firefighting is going to be with them. Now, if there's something to do with like a large customer issue, a large supplier issue, relationship type of thing, or interpersonal cultural issue, then I get involved. Now, my balance between the two businesses, it would be hard to give you a template answer to that. Yeah, then I think it's about urgency. A lot of times, the B2B company, which is the larger of the two, just has more customers, more going on, more urgent situations that pop up, more customers, more vendors, all that type of thing. So there's just more happening. On the other side, if someone doesn't like it and it's B2C and you don't fix it really quickly, that review goes online, and that's going to impact all the other buyers. So that stakes are just different. But no, there's not like a specific, I wake up on Monday and I know that like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm doing this, and Tuesday, Thursday, I'm doing that. It's situational, but I would say that more of the time has to be dedicated to the larger of the two companies. But like I said, they share the manufacturing base. So we know that when we're observing the KPIs and the metrics for that, we are still observing kind of the flow that affects both of them.
When you're coming in and having to make calls, maybe things are working the way they should. What's the dependency upon you getting the calls right?
People do ask me, kind of weighing in on a decision before they've even made it. Of course, they say, maybe if there's a risk involved in the outcome, hey, I want to do this, but I'm afraid this is going to be a big consequence financially, or it's going to require investment. Like, can you help me make that decision? And then I'll jump in on the front end. But in other cases, like, we've given people quite a lot of trust and autonomy. We've got an experienced and a team with high integrity, and they can handle a lot of that stuff. And I would say that the business's approach, even prior to my being there, has been to make sure people have autonomy and freedom of decision making. And so that's been a real benefit to me, having been somebody who walked in about 6 years into the company. I was able to walk in and do more development, but not have to start from scratch. So most of the people in the company who are making decisions, even customer facing decisions, have the basics for how they're going to do that, unless something extraordinary happens. Obviously, like, I would be more involved in like the kind of things we're talking today, things that affect the system.
Let's just say if things are piling up on both sides, that could be detrimental. Does anything on the B2B side get less attention when you're dealing with the B2C company buying for your attention if things start getting crazy on both sides?
Yeah, I think that while the B2C company needs less urgent attention as frequently, when it needs it, it's got less of a support base because it doesn't have all the same group of people supporting it. A smaller team, and so because there's a smaller team, I can delegate less. There's less amortization of responsibility. So yeah, when I do that, then the B2B side is going to have to. I'm going to have to trust that the people on that side are the right people on that side, and that's going to probably affect what we're talking about today. Like if I have to put attention in one area, and if I have to put my blinders on, even for a couple of days or something, a week, no matter which side it is, I have to know that the other side's in good hands and it's not going to fall off if I'm not looking, right? I can't be the one spinning every plate. And luckily I'm not generally, but the critical nature of that is I think something we'll look at a little bit today.
Walk us through maybe a tough stretch, what that would look like in your world, not a crisis, just maybe a period where things are stacking up and not letting up. What's the toll it takes on you, and how do you prioritize where your attention needs to go?
We're fortunate. We're quite a diversified company generally, and we can get so busy for such long periods of time that one of the things we promise to our customers is this flexible, agile support, this really high responsive, what you need when you need it, and it's something that we can do uniquely well. But when we're really busy, and if people aren't all rowing in the same way, we get these situations where lead times get expanded and all of a sudden we're not as flexible. We can't get you what you need exactly when you need it. We'll get you what you need. Can you please wait 8 weeks, right? And it doesn't feel good to say that. And not only do I feel the pressure from that, and the customers feel frustrated by that, and the people talking in our company who have positions that speak directly to customers really feel the stress about that. When are we going to ever see this not say we're so far behind? And that takes a toll on everybody's morale, not just mine. So it matters to me because I'm answering to all of the people outside the company, all the people inside the company, all the maybe shareholders and the directors. Everybody wants to make sure that these things stay on the rails. So that's my concern. But I would be naive to say it doesn't affect everybody because every position I can tell that there's a morale we pay if we don't keep on top of those types of things.
When you're putting together things for your clients and your attention's everywhere, maybe you are bringing on new people at one time. Maybe it's a week where things are busy in both companies. How does that, like I told that it would take on you, and because everything's pulling on your attention at once, how does that, if it does, affect your work and how you think about the companies and the pressure that you have on you during those stretches?
I'm really letting people down. I'm dropping the ball for the people that I need to be communicating with. So, and it's not always, I know we're kind of talking about how there's two businesses involved, but it's not always as clear cut as this business or that business. It could be there's a problem with a specific customer and I need to deal with one salesperson and one customer, and that needs to take time. We could have a customer issue that lasts months if it's big enough, right? We could have a 7-figure dispute and it could be lasting a long, long time. That does happen. It doesn't happen often, thankfully, but it does happen. And when it happens, it's even this people in the same side of the business that could suffer if I'm head down, buried in that for too long. Like I said, we've got great people who I can trust, but they still ought to have access to me and access to my support. And sometimes what I feel like is when I'm really busy, I'm not popping my head out and even seeing if they do need that support. So I'm a little bit blind to those things. I can become detached from the inputs I then require to keep the company aligned. Like if I don't check in with all the departments and all the people, I'm not going to hear, here's what's wrong with this process this week. We've noticed something, or this is a trend that's going the wrong way, or just all these different issues that could be happening. We're getting this type of feedback from customers or vendors lately, and so we should change the way we do something. If I don't gather those little pieces of feedback, I'm in a leadership role in a company, and so I guess like from my perspective, I look at, let me hear about all the challenges and opportunities all over the place, and let me aggregate those and chart a course forward for us. Now, if I'm putting the blinders on, yeah, I'm helping in one area, but I'm a little bit more blind to the other areas. And so I'm going to have to do some catch up, or I'm going to just simply live with those blind spots.
When you're buried down deep in whatever you're working on, are you noticing things slipping, or are they being brought to your attention?
It can be both. So if there are people who are noticing slippage, feel a confidence about talking to me about that. I give people the same open door no matter who they are, but everybody's different. So some people will be really prone to coming to me and making me aware of that, and others won't. I think one of the challenges, and it affects what we're talking today, is that when people tell me about the pains, sometimes, and I'm not 100% sure why, but they tend to reduce the expression of risk. They kind of downplay the risk of what they're bringing up to me. So they're bringing me a problem, very calm, very level-headed. It's not, hey, the sky is falling, we need you now. They might just be saying something like, hey, I'm not sure about this, but really the sky is falling and they need me now. And so I've learned not to just assume that the level they're bringing it to me is the level it's at, not because I'm micromanaging, but because I think sometimes they're actually asking for more help than it sounds like.
Is there something that, had you just focused on one company, has it shown you something more about yourself running two versus what it would be like just running one?
I am the kind of person I can kind of shut it down. I mean, I think about work related things all the time, but I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe my wife would say differently, but I don't think it spills over into family life so much. If I'm not sleeping well or something's keeping me up at night, I already can't afford to lose what I've got for sleep. So I do notice a caliber of thinking difference when I'm like overwhelmed or not sleeping, for sure. I definitely think when I can take that, when I have the energy and I have the clarity, the power of the thinking is greater, and then the outcomes tend to be more probably better. Not always perfect, but I can actually apply the best thinking I have, at my disposal. So yeah, I think that can suffer, just like my own decision making ability. And maybe it's like what I said earlier, where I'm focusing in on a narrower set of things. Maybe the more taxed I am, the more I tend to focus narrowly, because I can wrap my small brain around that. And so maybe that's kind of, again, maybe a feeder. I wouldn't have necessarily said that, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that contributes to something like tolerating the wrong kind of people because you're focused too much on something else.
And when people come to you, do you feel internally that those are actions you need to take care of right away? Or is that something you want to dive into, investigate, and then react?
I would say that, like, historically, my goal was always to be, well, is still to be, principled in the way that I approach things. Now, part of what I guess we'll talk about today is that there's a lesson there that waiting or trying to have absolute clarity before you would do something. It's not like when you wait, you're postponing it and everything's good until then. It's like you're actually just, in saving yourself the burden immediately, you're kind of asking other people who are probably silently holding the burden to keep holding that burden until the point that you decide to deal with it. And that's not fair either. And that's kind of what I did learn in my situation, in retrospect. So yeah, so I think we just have to be careful that I want to be able to make a fast decision if I have the clarity, and I want to have clarity, but I have to find a balance between what's the right amount of action to take given the amount of clarity I have. So nowadays I might do something like, there's a very quick step we want to take, which is more about discovery, but not so much about assuming that the story is true yet. What I want to do is find out all the context, but I want to make that move quickly. If we can start talking about, hey, you know what, we've been noticing that, like, a lot of times when you're absent, there's no advance notice about that, or like it kind of seems to always happen last minute and always on a Friday, that sort of thing. Like, hey, is there something going on? Because it could be, on one hand, to hell with you as a company, I like long weekends. On the other hand, it could be my kid gets out of school a little earlier because they have this special thing that they do. Like, those are different things, and let's have a different kind of conversation. So if I kind of go in guns blazing about that, then I'm in the wrong too. So discovery phase, I think what I have learned is discovery phase should be triggered early. I probably waited to observe too long rather than proactively going and discovering through conversation and confronting it. But I don't mean confrontationally, just addressing it proactively, and explicitly, without being accusatory. And I think that has to happen fast. And then I think what happens next really depends a lot on what happens in that discovery phase.
When you're really deep into the business, focusing on getting the work done and these things, do they feel heavy at the time, or does it feel like I can find the time? Because I'm assuming as 6 years, whatever evolves, maybe they become a lot easier. But in the beginning, you might be a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. When I when I came into the company, I had more of a concern that if I firstly, I don't want to say I had the same clarity then that I have now because I didn't. I was really learning and not knowing the context for people, like what's normal, what's not normal, what should we tolerate and not tolerate. And I was kind of depending on people who'd been there longer than me in leadership to guide that. And so it wasn't until late 2024, the second half of 2024, I became the president of the company. Prior to that, I was designated as the next president, but I was working under the president and learning and that sort of thing. So when I was doing that, I think I had this feeling like, yeah, I'm in leadership, but the buck doesn't stop with me. Like I have my vote in all of this, but it's not just my say. Now, when I became the president, I kind of had this. It's hard to even explain unless you experience it, and you've probably been there as an entrepreneur. But you do get the feeling like if I don't change this, then nobody's changing this. So when I became the president, that weight definitely happened. So yeah, at that time, I had to, no matter how I felt, I had to start taking a different look at it. And really, since some years had passed, it wasn't just like, oh, there's one person that doesn't quite fit right. Now we're talking like 5, 6 people in a 60-person company. Well, you can't have 10% of your company not fit. It just doesn't work. So we were in that type of scenario where you had people say things like a grapevine conversation that I heard was through a manager. So I do trust that this happened. That somebody told them, when I feel I've done a hard day's work, then the next day I make sure I take it easy, or I just don't show up because I've worked hard the one day. And I thought, okay, like firstly, let's make sure we're not doing something ergonomically that's like not respectful to people. But secondly, your colleagues are picking up that slack, and that's not fair to them. It's not like you're giving them the pay for picking up your slack unexpectedly every time. And so that's not fair. And so I had to, where I was narrowly focused and thinking, I need to help each individual person needs all of my support and compassion. I started having to think this system needs my support and compassion. Like I'm a steward of the business. It has to become durable. These people are preventing wellness of other people, consistency for those other people, consistency for customers. Now the system is suffering because of that. Now I need to take that seriously because it's not compassionate to make the system and the group of people suffer. And I'm in leadership not because I want to pat myself on the back. I like this position because I get to see if we can make a community that functions better than the one outside the doors. If I just sit on my hands, I'm not doing that. And so then I don't deserve the role. And that kind of kicked me in gear. The principles founding it are the same. I want to be good to people. I want to make this thing positive. I want to have a good working environment. But I had to stop looking at an individual each time. And I had to start looking at the system. And that clarified it big time for me.
So in hindsight, those systems that you put in place when you took over, do you feel a change in the company itself, the morale, the day-to-day from what you changed back then?
One of my fears was, well, people would think that I had some sort of ego and I came in and now I'm like, if I let people go, they're going to think, oh my gosh, what about my own job security? Do we have this now corporate face that's transactional about people and sees us as a cost to be reduced, right? Like, I don't want that for our people to think that, oh, like, especially if there's like 4 or 5 people that all of a sudden aren't there tomorrow. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, these people don't care about us. And that's what I thought they might feel. What I learned and the feedback I got was that everyone around them was kind of feeling like it was overdue. They've been waiting for it. They've been almost disappointed it didn't happen yet. And people were grateful that that was done. And I had been feeling the kind of dark cloud that I knew this company for some time. And it was like, why is this like company that was so joyous and different and fun kind of more getting downtrodden? And it's easy to think, well, it's because we're getting bigger. And so we're more responsible for bigger things. And we're not as community oriented and like family like as we used to be, just because it's growing. That's what growing is all about. But I really don't accept that. And it has shown since kind of eliminating those toxic people, even though I don't think that they weren't all trying to be malicious. Some of them just are genuinely not wired the way that we need them to be wired for this company. But not having them there, no, I did see it skyrocket. I saw people say, oh, okay, these people will defend us. They'll defend the people who want to be here for the right reason. Thanks for doing that. And I've been really clear when we're at events and things like that to kind of say, I've never seen our company with such a great group of people. We've got nobody here that's shooting it in the foot and rowing in the wrong direction. Like, I'm really proud of that. And I think they all kind of feel like we can have fun again. And I didn't expect it. I really thought people were going to feel more threatened and not thankful.
Staff, employees, they might have their own subculture within the company that you're not privy to because there's so many levels between you and that. When you're looking back on that, how did it feel? Because again, this is all new. You're in discovery mode and you're trying to put that all together while you're also trying to make sure the business is running.
Well, I would say I was always fine to be involved in it, but I was pretty acutely aware of the fact that losing some of these people was going to make a difference in the way we could make good on our promises, timeline promises to customers. And so there were some people in this mix that I'm talking about that were kind of, I want to call them key operationally. I don't mean that they had bigger responsibilities than other people, but they were more directly involved in the outputs that could make or break some of the important outcomes especially for this equine brand. So I guess I just wanted to make sure that the manager and the other people in those departments weren't going to feel that what I did kind of put them in a really bad spot. We've got salespeople and they're not going to think, hey, like I made a commitment to the customer. Now you've just undermined it. Or the staff are going to say, we just started catching up and now look what you've done to us. Or the manager's going to say like, I'm never going to hire someone fast enough. Now I got to borrow from this other place and kind of piss off one of my other guys that I really like, So I would say that I wasn't afraid to jump in, but I definitely didn't want to make the decision in isolation. I wanted to make sure I consulted with like kind of the stakeholders in the decision, and that included the managers and some of the other people like that. But they couldn't know candidly everything. Now their manager could, but not everybody else that I could talk to and kind of get a feel for could really know why we're feeling all that out. But we had to just tastefully feel it out and make sure that if we did this, could we get through? And I think that probably not taking that action sooner is why we tolerated it for longer than we should have. Like we thought, yeah, the people aren't right, but if we take them out, are we destabilizing the whole system? And that was a fear, right? Like we're letting people inside and outside the company down if we destabilize it.
What are you leaning on most during that stretch? Is it management, or maybe if I give this time, it'll fix itself, or it'll work itself out, or something else? Like, what? How did you get through that in the beginning?
If I had all the clarity then that I have now, then I would have said, well, I leaned on my management team and we did these things and then it all worked out. But what I did wrong, I think, and I do have a leadership team and a management team and they're all great. But we tried to fix the wrong problem. Like, right. We thought it was a skills problem or a performance problem, right? Not an unfixable alignment problem with people. So we approached it like, well, maybe we just need to learn what about the process isn't making this person happy? Or do they need different skills or a different rotation? Or do we need to just be patient because they have something going on in their life? Or do they have other baggage from their last employment that we have to kind of help them shake it off? There was a lot of kind of giving that benefit of the doubt, and we just I didn't have that clarity. So we were trying to fix it. We were trying to fix the wrong thing. It wasn't a performance issue. It was about them. It was about the misalignment between them and us. And we weren't going to change that. And no matter what we did, we weren't really changing the needle on it. So in hindsight, I would love to say, yeah, well, I went to the management team and we made that sort of we had that kind of conversation, but we didn't. We just set about making small decisions that tried to fix the wrong thing and therefore let the problem persist longer. Now I know we ought to have gone into that real explicit discovery phase fast. Been really clear with the staff about what was needed, what was different than what was now that was needed, and to observe it over the next couple of weeks. And if it doesn't change, it doesn't change. We have to go our separate ways. Not to be rude, but just everybody's got their own course they have to take, and they have to be true to themselves. So we didn't do it that way. We tried to fix the wrong thing, and it was all because we were trying to do the right thing by people. We tried to do the right thing by individual people, but not by the group.
As you're in the middle of this, you're discovering it's not just individual people. What was it like making calls from inside that situation?
A lot of the conversations are happening between me. Like, we're having this thought, like, we don't know 100% if it's linked to, if the culture seems to be not at its prime, but we don't know if it's related. We know that we're having more HR issues, but we don't know if it's because of these people or if these people are just ferreting out things that were already there that aren't really their fault. Like I say, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. So there's a whole bunch of these other signs that kind of could look like a couple of things, so what we were doing was kind of trying to disentangle that. So we had to have there was a situation we had to get an external investigator involved just to make sure that things were done in a way where, like, because there was accusations could be made against HR, and then HR can't be the one who determines the truth about that situation. That's not, obviously, they're not going to be objective enough. They might not be. So, like, it starts costing money in legal and investigators in HR. It starts having all these little signs of that things feel darker than they were. People seem to give you the kind of smile and nod, but they're not having the same conversation they used to have with you. So I'm thinking, I'm not thinking a lot of clear things, but I have a lot of questions. Like, is it related or isn't it? And is the solution that something that I'm just not doing for these people? Like, is this just part of what it's like to have a group of 60 people with different values? Is that just something that is normal? Is it just because we're growing? So I would say there was a whole bunch of uncertainty, partially because, we just hadn't addressed it. We hadn't done the discovery head on that we could have otherwise, maybe now I know in hindsight, to do. But secondly, I was just newer in that kind of role. Looking out for 60 people is not something I had done before. I was a partner in a business before, but it's a much smaller business. There was just some learning that I had to do. And I'm sure if there's someone listening to this who's been, I hope, who has more staff than I have and has kind of learned the same thing, they might have felt that in the beginning. And nowadays it's like a no-brainer, but like I had to go through that gauntlet same as anybody.
If you had to deal with this in the future, what signals would you start to pick up on right away that seemed foreign back then?
Even when people start bringing you these like mild tempered examples of things that are happening, again, like I said, to know better than to think that because it's brought to you in a controlled, calm, and mild way, that it's not a severe thing that they're bringing up to you. So a lot of people, again, would have come up to me and said, "Hey, I heard this," or "I just want you to know I kind of witnessed this." And a lot of times it seems kind of said in passing. It's said really calmly. I think nowadays I just kind of follow up and check on things a little bit more. What's really going on. Like I said, a lot of times people are asking for more support than they're indicating they're asking for, and I took that at face value, and that was not like wrong in principle, but it didn't work. So it has to be better than that. It wasn't like a bad value judgment, but it was bad decision. So I just didn't know. It was learning for me. So one of the things is just when you start hearing the grapevine always pointing in the same direction, or you have a lot of good staff who've been around a long time, kind of with stories about who they're not going to want to work around and stuff like that. You just kind of look into those things. What's going on here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And things like just inconsistency about attendance or anything like that. So we're pretty sensitive about whether people are happy in the company. And now I can see in retrospect, like, now I've proven to myself that the joy can be there even as a large quote unquote larger company than we were in the inception. I wouldn't necessarily come up with those same, I don't want to say excuses, but the wrong hypotheses that kind of excuse my not taking action right away. I don't think I would do that any longer.
You mentioned clarity. What would feel different for you now, even if nothing around you changed?
We would have a lot less uncertainty about what's the path to start taking to learn about what measures are really needed to intervene with this. What I would do different in practice, or what it would look like for me to do operationally, would be like going directly to the HR manager and the manager of that department, sitting with them and having a quick talk, a frank talk, like, here's what we're hearing. What are you hearing? Does this warrant a conversation? Do we need to check anything first? Because we should be having a conversation with this person. Then we're going to pull that person in like quick. It's going to be like that day or the next day. We're going to have a little talk with them, how things going. Like, we're seeing some patterns here. Here's what we think we're seeing. What's the reason for some of that stuff? Maybe they've got a good reason, and we'll talk about that. And if they don't, we're going to just say, we're going to ask you to do a little bit better than that. So that's a frank conversation that we would make sure we had right away. Then following that, we would keep an eye on that, and we wouldn't be looking for them to make a values change over the next 6 months. You can look for performance improvement over a 6-month time horizon, but somebody's alignment with values, it's like it has to happen now. You're either accountable or you're not. You're either there for your team or you're not. You're either bad mouthing other people around you or you're not. Those aren't things that take 6 months to change, right? So So we would not tolerate a long period of observation. So now we would just have that conversation, do the observation. If it doesn't change in a couple of days or a week, it's not going to change.
For people who are listening and want to follow you, follow your work, where would you direct them?
AngeloD'AmicoCanada.com or Angelo D'Amico on LinkedIn. And if they want to learn about the companies, they can go to CanadaRubberGroup.com or Softstall.com.
Thank you again for your time today.
Nice speaking with you, Joe.
He wasn't avoiding the problem. He was trying to solve it the right way. And that's what kept it in place longer than it should have been.